Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. In a scary jungle, a man runs in fear and has a gun in his hand. Suddenly, a vampire appears and bites him. He had no hair and looks very terrifying, possessing large and frightening teeth. The creature sucks the blood of the poor man, but before the vampire finishes all his blood, the sun appears, and the vampire burns and turns to ashes. However, because of the bite, this man also becomes a vampire, as we see that the sunlight is also burning him. Now, to save his life, he must hide from the sunlight. So, covering himself with a cloth, he hides in a shed. After this, we see a boy named Stan, and his mother came to wake him up for breakfast. While eating, he encounters a strange scene, as suddenly his mother's condition worsened so much that all her hair fell out, and her face also began to darken. In a few seconds, his entire family was dead. Fortunately, it's just Stan's nightmare, but unfortunately, the reality is that his parents were not alive as he saw, because his parents had already died, and now he lives with his grandfather in his house, but as he was a soldier, he was a bit strict, so his behavior with Stan was not good, as he did not like him much. Now, as every day, he goes to school. We can see that the shed where the vampire man is hiding is outside Stan's house. On the way, the young delinquents at school insult him. He was on a bicycle, so he crashed into a police truck, in which there was an officer and a sheriff. Both get very angry with him. The officer tells Stan that they are letting him go now, but there will be no more forgiveness next time. At school, the three delinquents from before were also bothering Stan's friend. Then suddenly, Stan arrives and saves him. The two walk away, but being insulted, they come back to confront them. The fight escalates, and then the teacher arrives and separates them. Here, we see a girl, Roxy, who was a friend of Stan before, but now she has joined the mischievous group. Stan and his friend go out to have some fun. Meanwhile, his friend makes jokes about Roxy and says something wrong, which makes Stan angry because he likes Roxy. He gets upset and starts to walk away. His friend says that Roxy is a crazy and cowardly person, who for the greed of money and a car left him, and even so, Stan is still crazy about her. Then Stan says that, in his opinion, it is not like that, everyone has the right to live a good life. Even after going home, he was thinking about Roxy. Then his grandfather calls him to cut the grass. So, he takes his dog out to tie it up. Suddenly, the dog's behavior changes because it was constantly looking at the shed and barking. Stan feels something strange, so he enters the shed to check, where he finds human teeth that were from the vampire man because he had also become a complete vampire. Then he comes from behind and attacks Stan, but as soon as the sun passes through the window, he starts to burn. Stan, not knowing the danger there, starts threatening the person to come out quietly, or he will let his dog in. Despite the threats, when he doesn't come out, Stan lets his dog, which runs into the shed. Now, it was fine when he went, but his head came back, making Stan very scared, as he understood it was not a joke but a big problem. That's why he enters the house to get a gun. Here, his grandfather stops him and asks about the dog. Then Stan tells everything, that there is a demon, an animal in the shed, and says they killed the dog, but his grandfather doesn't believe him. However, when he goes out to check, the grandfather is convinced upon seeing the dog's severed head. He gets furious, so, even against Stan's will, he goes to the shed. The next moment, he falls to the ground, as the vampire had attacked him from behind. Stan makes a great effort to save him, but the vampire was very strong and pulled him inside. He locks the entire shed with chains and seals because he didn't know what to do. He couldn't tell the police because they constantly suspect him, considering him a delinquent who at any moment will do something wrong. When he was trying to sleep at night, someone tries to open his door, which doesn't open because it was locked. Then the vampire starts calling him, and he begins to be hypnotized and goes towards the shed. When he was about to open the door, his eyes open, it was all just a bad nightmare. The next day at school, he was trying to forget everything. That's when Roxy passed by him. She looked sad and sat next to him. They started talking and reminiscing about the past. Then the leader of the delinquents, Marble, came to bother him. He starts to provoke Roxy, saying she is sitting with a cowardly man. After they left, Stan's friend arrived, seeing who Roxy left. Then Stan starts getting angry with his friend, saying he ruined everything and spoiled their mission, and he didn't even get to tell her about the shed. After talking about this, both went their own ways, but unfortunately, Stan's friend is surrounded by Marble and his gang and assaulted by them. Back home, Stan grabs a bat to face the vampire. He goes with great courage and bravery, but the moment he tried to listen from outside, the vampire breaks the shed door and grabs him. Fortunately, the sunlight touches the vampire's hands, and he starts to burn. He releases Stan, who stays safe. He still hadn't recovered from this trauma when his friend also arrives there after being beaten. They had beaten him a lot, he was very angry, and that's why he asked Stan to tell him about what is inside the shed. Stan tells everything, but he still doesn't believe it. He says if this is true, then prove it. He says if he goes towards the shed, he will see. The moment he sees the terrible face, he finally believes and also gets scared. After this, the two friends gather pieces of wood and close the hole in the door. His friend suggests bringing Marble and his gang to lock them inside, saying he will take revenge and they won't think of provoking anyone else because they won't come out alive. Stan doesn't think like that, and they won't do any of that. Actually, Stan's friend was going crazy with the fire of revenge, which wasn't a good thing. Stan was also afraid that he might tell someone about the vampire, but his friend reassures him, saying not to worry, as he won't tell anyone. Stan was watching a movie at night in which he wanted to learn how to kill a vampire. He learns 3 ways: first, burn it in the sun; second, pierce the heart; third, cut off its head and separate it from the body. While watching the movie, he falls asleep. A girl comes out of the poster on the wall and comes to him. It was none other than Roxy. She starts to caress him, but suddenly she turns into a monster, and once again, it was just a terrible dream. In the morning he goes to the shed and pierces it so that the sunlight enters and burns the creature inside. Later at home, the sheriff visits him. Stan lies to send the sheriff away, saying his grandfather is not at home. Upon hearing this, the sheriff starts to doubt because his car was parked outside the house. She then asks Stan about a family, but Stan says he doesn't know this family. With this, she starts to suspect more because that family used to live very close to his house. Someone was killing that family's animals. To find the killer, the head of that family went to the jungle, but hasn't returned yet. So, we understand that the man we saw at the beginning, the one running in the jungle in fear, was actually the head of that family. Being a vampire, he is hiding in Stan's shed. He was late for school and didn't give a proper answer to any of the sheriff's words. The sheriff says she can take him to school, so Stan has to agree with this. Before leaving, the sheriff sees Stan's grandfather's cane, which was lying on the floor. Stan arrives at school and meets Roxy. She asks him what he did to himself. During their conversation, Marble appears and starts to provoke Roxy again. For Stan, this is the limit, so he starts to hit Marble with punches. He knocks him down and doesn't stop the punches, and Marble couldn't do anything. All his pride disappears in front of everyone. Before he could kill Marble, the teacher came and stopped him. He says angrily that he is upset with his behavior, saying he crossed the line. The teacher says he will go to his grandfather and tell him everything. Stan gets very scared hearing this because he knows if they reach the shed, it will be very bad. Without thinking anything, Stan runs home, and Marble follows him. The sheriff was sent to Stan's house, but when no one opened the door, she went towards the shed, and seeing it sealed, understood that someone was inside. Then Stan arrives and the sheriff points the gun at him, but he tries to make her understand, yet she isn't ready to hear anything. Even after Stan warns her, she opens the door. With this, the vampire comes out and attacks her, biting her neck. The vampire then rips off the sheriff's arm and drags her inside, leaving Stan traumatized by the scene. When Marble arrives to increase the trouble, saying he will get revenge for the previous insult, Stan says there's a bigger problem there, so it wasn't the right time. But Marble doesn't listen and attacks him. He beats him and continues hitting him non-stop. To save him, Stan's friend arrives, and Marble gets scared seeing him armed and reflecting that undoubtedly he was always a coward, not so smart, but in terms of madness, he shows he is the first. Stan tries to stop him, and in response, he says he won't hesitate to kill him if interfered, angrily saying it was his day of revenge. He then tells Marble to enter the shed. Before entering, Marble looks at the cut hand and gets scared seeing it, but has to enter the shed. As soon as he enters, the vampire pulls him and attacks him. Because of this, Stan gets very angry with his friend, questioning what he had done. Now, in their fight, he hits Stan with a gun and leaves him unconscious. When his eyes open, he finds Roxy in front of him. Seeing the cut hand, many questions arise in Roxy's mind. Before answering any of her questions, he enters the shed with a gun to check. Stan sees Marble's corpse being thrown aside by his friend, who also became a vampire. Stan asks him where the vampire that was there before is, and his friend replies that it's gone for now, but it will come back to take revenge on him. Meanwhile, Roxy also arrives. Seeing her, Stan gets distracted, and his friend attacks him, but seizing the chance, Stan stabs a stick into the vampire's body, knocking him down, and the sunlight burns his arm. Stan, thinking he might be dead, goes out and takes care of Roxy. Suddenly, Stan's friend also comes out, regretting doing all this, but it's too late and the sunlight leaves him unconscious. He starts to burn, but Stan covers him with a cloth to save his life, but apparently, it's the end for him. This problem was solved, but the real concern still remains, as the previous vampire still lives. After this, Stan and Roxy do what they can to try to escape the evil that is coming, as night approaches. They seal the entire house, make many sharp pieces of wood, and additionally, they hide both cars so no one would suspect. At night, these two are ready to kill him. Then, Marble's two friends come to the door looking for him, thus ruining the plan. Although the two explain for them to leave, they don't listen. Suddenly the vampire arrives and one of them seeing it tries to run, but the vampire pulls him up and kills him terribly. Seeing this, they have to open the door and bring the other inside, but it doesn't help because Roxy forgot to close the upstairs door, allowing the vampire to enter from the upper floor. These three make a plan to go up and kill the creature. They go up with their own weapons. They split up to find the vampire, which they shouldn't have done. Then, Marble's other friend finds his friend who is now also a vampire. He attacks him and turns him into a vampire too. Now, Roxy goes to the room and starts looking at the pictures. From behind, Marble's vampire friend comes and attacks her. Hearing her voice, Stan goes there. Marble's two vampire friends appear in the middle. Then, he quickly goes to a room and locks it. He starts loading the gun to kill them. Now, Marble's two vampire friends were also forcibly entering. Taking advantage of this, Stan kills both with a single bullet, shooting in the first one's mouth, and passing through hits the other. When the vampire is about to bite Roxy, Stan arrives, but the creature is fast, and in a single attack, he goes to Stan and, after taking his gun, throws it away. Stan tries to hurt the vampire, but it's not enough. The vampire grabs him by the neck, and when Roxy with the gun aims at the creature, the vampire throws Stan back, so Roxy shoots the vampire's face, but nothing happens. The creature quickly takes her gun, and to save her, Stan throws a knife at the vampire, but ends up hitting his friend Roxy. The vampire then grabs Stan again to kill him. After that, Roxy takes the opportunity and separates the vampire's head from the body with an axe, finally killing that evil. After this, they put all the vampire bodies inside the shed and burn them all there. In the end, both are relieved as they managed to get out of that situation alive. The next morning they wake up inside the car, having no idea what's hidden in the trunk and what's to come.